My life was a tapestry woven with threads of silk and gold, a world of privilege where every whim was anticipated. I was the adored daughter, the cherished heiress. My world shimmered with champagne toasts and chandeliers. But beneath the surface, a secret festered, a truth so deeply buried it would take years to unearth. My parents, with their gentle smiles, were masters of this deception. They shielded me from the harsh realities of the world. Every lavish party was a gilded cage, keeping me from the truth. I was their princess, their beloved daughter. Or so I believed. They promised me a fairy tale complete with a prince charming. He was everything a woman could desire: handsome, successful, and devoted. Our future seemed preordained, a seamless continuation of my charmed life. Little did I know the foundation of my world was built on shifting sands. A truth lay dormant, waiting to shatter the illusion of my perfect life. From the moment I opened my eyes, my path was paved with privilege. Private schools, exotic vacations, designer clothes, these were my reality. My parents orchestrated every aspect of my life. I was their prized possession, shielded from the world. Every milestone was met with their proud smiles. They crafted a perfect world for me. As I grew, their control became more subtle. They guided my choices, steering my future. They chose my friends and hobbies. I was their masterpiece, molded into their ideal. At the center stood my fiancé, promising love and happiness. Our engagement was a grand affair, a testament to our future. Despite the carefully constructed facade, doubts flickered at the edges of my mind. Like shadows dancing in the periphery, they hinted at something amiss. Why did some family photos seem to exclude me, as if I were an afterthought? Why were there whispers and knowing glances exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking? These fleeting moments of unease were quickly dismissed, brushed aside like dust motes in the sunlight. My parents, with their unwavering love and reassuring words, always managed to quell my doubts. They had answers for everything, explanations that seemed plausible at the time. "You were such a tiny baby," my mother would say, her voice laced with a tenderness that always disarmed me. "It's no wonder you don't remember those early years." And I, desperate to believe, would cling to their words like a lifeline. But the whispers persisted, growing louder with each passing day. They swirled around me, threatening to unravel the fabric of my carefully constructed reality. The truth, when it finally revealed itself, arrived in the most innocuous of forms. A faded photograph tucked away in the dusty attic of our summer home. It was a picture taken shortly after my birth, or so I thought. As I held the brittle photograph in my trembling hands, a chill snaked down my spine. The baby in the picture, swaddled in a hospital blanket, bore no resemblance to me. Her skin tone, her hair, everything was different. Panic swelled in my chest, constricting my breath. This wasn't me. This couldn't be me. The world tilted on its axis, the familiar suddenly strange and unsettling. The whispers in the back of my mind roared to life, no longer content to be ignored. The truth, it seemed, had been here all along, hidden in plain sight. And The discovery of the photograph was like a crack in a pristine vase, a single imperfection that threatened to shatter the entire illusion. My life, so meticulously curated, so perfectly arranged, was crumbling around me. The more I stared at the image, the more alien it seemed. The baby's eyes, though barely visible in the faded photo, seemed to hold a secret, a truth that had been hidden from me for far too long. The world I thought I knew, the life I had so readily embraced, felt like a lie. A wave of nausea washed over me as the weight of the situation crashed down. This wasn't just some insignificant detail, some easily explained discrepancy. This was my life, my identity, and it had been built on a foundation of deceit. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The once comforting walls of our family home now felt oppressive, every shadowed corner whispering secrets I couldn't decipher. My parents, with their carefully constructed facade of love and concern, now seemed like strangers. Their smiles felt strained, their reassurances hollow. Every conversation felt like a performance, a carefully choreographed dance designed to keep the truth hidden. I found myself scrutinizing their every word, every gesture, searching for clues. Why had they never spoken about my early childhood? Why were there no photographs of me as a baby? The question swirled in my mind, a relentless torrent of doubt and suspicion. I was trapped in a gilded cage of their making, and I was desperate to break free. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved into my family's past. I scoured old photo albums, searching for any trace of myself, but it was like grasping at smoke. Then I found a small leather-bound diary. The pages were filled with my mother's elegant script. An entry sent chills down my spine. It described a visit to the hospital after my supposed birth. The walls of my carefully constructed reality were closing in, the whispers of the past growing louder with each passing day. I was torn between the life I had always known and the unsettling truth that was slowly revealing itself. Driven by a need for answers, I decided to confront my parents. The conversation was strained, filled with awkward silences and carefully chosen words. They denied everything at first, dismissing my concerns as foolish fantasies. But the evidence was mounting and I refused to be silenced. I showed them the photograph, the diary entry, the undeniable proof that something was amiss. The color drained from their faces as they realized the truth could no longer be contained. The truth, when it finally came, was more shocking than I could have ever imagined. My parents, their eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and sorrow, finally confessed. I was adopted, switched at birth with another baby girl. They had known all along, but fear had kept them silent. They spoke of a time decades ago when they had been young and desperate. They had longed for a child, but fate had dealt them a cruel hand. Then, one fateful night, an opportunity had presented itself. A baby girl, born to a young woman who couldn't care for her. They had made a choice, a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. My mind raced, trying to grasp the enormity of their confession. Adopted, switched at birth, The very foundation of my identity had been shaken, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty. My parents, their faces etched with remorse, promised to tell me everything. They handed me a small, worn envelope, its contents holding the key to my true past. Inside, I found a collection of documents, hospital records, legal papers, and a faded photograph of a newborn baby girl. This baby, with her wide, curious eyes and the faintest hint of a smile, was me. The hospital records told a tale of two families, their lives intertwined by a twist of fate. On a stormy night, two baby girls, both born with the same fierce will to live, were brought into the world just hours apart. But in the chaos of the maternity ward, a terrible mistake was made. Two infants, their identities confused, were sent home with the wrong families. Among the documents, I found a small, leather-bound diary, its pages filled with faded ink and the unmistakable scent of time. It belonged to my biological mother. Her words, raw with emotion, painted a vivid picture of a young woman struggling to come to terms with an impossible choice. They say I'm too young, too poor to give her the life she deserves. But how can I give her away? She's my everything. She had been alone, unmarried, and terrified. Giving me up for adoption had been the most difficult decision of her life, a decision made with a heavy heart and a mother's love that knew no bounds. She wrote of her dreams for me, her hopes that I would be raised in a loving home, surrounded by people who would cherish me. She yearned to watch me grow, to witness all the milestones she knew she couldn't be a part of. And in a cruel twist of fate, her wish had been granted, just not in the way she had imagined. My adoptive parents, burdened by their own secret, had kept my true origins hidden from me. They had lived with the weight of their deception for years, terrified of losing the life they had built, the daughter they had grown to love as their own. They had convinced themselves that it was better to maintain the facade, to protect me from a truth that would only bring pain and confusion. But in doing so, they had robbed me of the chance to know my biological family, to understand the circumstances of my birth. The revelation of my adoption had been a blow, but it was the truth about my fiancé that shattered my world. He was not who I thought he was. He was not the man I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with. He was my brother. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. My fiancé, the man I had planned to marry, the man I had shared my hopes and dreams with, was my own flesh and blood. The world spun around me, the familiar faces of my loved ones blurring into a dizzying kaleidoscope. How could this be happening? How could my life, once so seemingly perfect, be unraveling so quickly? The diary slipped from my grasp, its pages scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. My biological mother's words, once a source of comfort, now mocked me with their tragic irony. We had been living a lie, a cruel charade orchestrated by fate and perpetuated by the silence of those who claimed to love us. And now we were left to pick up the pieces. The weight of the truth was crushing, threatening to suffocate me. How could I face my fiancé, knowing that our love, our future, was built on a foundation of lies and deceit? How could I ever forgive my parents, both adoptive and biological, for the choices they had made? Choices that had led to this unimaginable situation. I was lost, adrift in a sea of emotions, unsure of which way to turn. The life I had known, the life I had taken for granted, was gone. In its place was a gaping void, a chasm of uncertainty that stretched out before me. But even in the midst of my pain, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I deserved to know the truth. I deserved to claim my own narrative, to write my own ending. And I would start by finding my twin, my other half, the sister whose life had been inextricably intertwined with mine from the moment we were born. The diary held a name, a beacon in the storm of my confusion. Kendra, my twin sister. My mother had named me Kendra, a secret whispered into the void, a hope for a future we were denied. Clutching the worn pages, I felt a surge of longing, a yearning for a connection I never knew existed. This woman, this Kendra, she was a part of me, a missing piece of the puzzle of my existence. My adoptive parents, their faces etched with a lifetime of guilt, could tell me little about her. They had honored the agreement, maintained the separation, burying the truth deeper with each passing year. But whispers and rumors, like smoke signals from a distant fire, hinted at a life lived in stark contrast to my own. A life of struggle, of resilience, of love forged in the crucible of hardship. The hospital records provided a starting point, a thread in the labyrinth of my past, an address, a name, a neighborhood that whispered of forgotten dreams and shattered hopes. I would find her. I had to find her. This sister, this stranger who shared my blood and my history, she was the key to unlocking the secrets of my identity. The journey was a descent into a world unknown, a stark contrast to the gilded cage of my upbringing. Each step took me further away from the life I thought I knew, closer to the truth I had been denied. And as I walked the streets she might have walked, breathed the air she might have breathed, I felt a strange sense of homecoming, a pull toward a destiny I was only beginning to understand. The apartment was small, sparsely furnished, but filled with a warmth that resonated deep within me. A woman stood before me, her eyes mirroring my own, a reflection of a life lived on a different path. Kendra. The years had etched their stories on their faces, but the resemblance was undeniable. We were two sides of the same coin, separated by circumstance, united by blood. The silence stretched thick with unspoken words, the weight of years of separation pressing down on us. Then a tentative smile, a hand outstretched, a bridge built across a chasm of lost time. And in that instant, the world shifted on its axis once more. Her story tumbled out, a torrent of emotions and experiences that mirrored my own confusion and pain. She spoke of a childhood marked by hardship, of a mother who loved her fiercely but struggled to provide. She spoke of dreams deferred, of opportunities missed, of a life lived in the shadow of a secret she never knew existed. And yet, through it all, she had persevered. Her spirit unbroken, her heart filled with a quiet strength that I envied. She had always known she was adopted, has that always felt a sense of displacement, a yearning for something more, but she had never dared to imagine that her truth lay in a world so different from her own. We talked for hours, our words a balm on old wounds, a shared language of loss and longing. Our lives, once separated by a twist of fate, were now irrevocably intertwined. We were sisters bound by blood and history, brought together by a shared past and a future yet to be written. The truth, once buried so deep, had set us free, free to explore the complexities of our new reality, to forge a bond forged in secrets and sealed in love. We had found each other, and in doing so, we had found ourselves. The weight of the truth, a heavy cloak I now wore, demanded to be shared. The carefully constructed facade of my life, once a source of comfort, felt like a prison. I had to tell my fiancé, my brother, the man who was both a stranger and kin. But the words, like frightened birds, refused to take flight. How do you explain the unexplainable? How do you unravel a lifetime of shared memories, of love and laughter with a single devastating truth? The guilt of venomous serpent coiled in my gut. Summoning a strength I didn't know I possessed, I reached for the phone. The air crackled with unspoken words, the past and present colliding in the silence. He answered on the second ring, his voice, usually so warm and familiar, now tinged with a distant concern. "We need to talk," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. The grand living room of my adoptive parents' home, usually the setting for elegant soirees and laughter-filled gatherings, became a battleground for truth and consequence. Kendra and I, two sides of a fractured mirror, stood before our adoptive parents, their faces, etched with a lifetime of carefully concealed guilt, crumbled at the sight of us. Two daughters bound by blood and circumstance, united in their pain. The truth, a tidal wave of long suppressed emotions, crashed over us, leaving destruction in its wake. My fiancé, his face ashen, stood frozen, caught between disbelief and a dawning horror. The world as we knew it was tilting on its axis, the foundations of our lives crumbling beneath the weight of revelation. The words, when they finally came, were heavy with accusation, laced with the bitterness of betrayal, years of unspoken resentment, of a life lived in the shadow of their deception, poured out. The room became a pressure cooker of emotions, the air thick with anger, grief, and the desperate need to understand. How could this have happened? The question, a wounded animal, howled in the silence. My adoptive parents, their voices trembling with remorse, recounted the events of that fateful night. They spoke of a time when desperation had clouded their judgment, when the longing for a child had overshadowed everything else. They had known from the very beginning that I wasn't theirs biologically. A mix-up at the hospital, a whispered offer, a decision made in the dead of night. They had convinced themselves that they were doing the right thing, that they were giving me a better life. But in their desire to protect their secret, they had created a web of deceit that had ensnared us all. The path to forgiveness, a winding road through a landscape of pain, was not an easy one. anger, sharp and raw, gave way to a dull ache of betrayal. But amidst the wreckage of our shattered realities, something unexpected began to blossom. Empathy, understanding. We were all victims of a cruel twist of fate, our lives irrevocably bound by a secret that had haunted us for far too long. Years of separation, of living separate lives, couldn't erase the love, the shared history that connected us. Tears were shed, apologies offered and accepted. The healing had begun. Life, like the stars in the night sky, had shifted, creating a new constellation of relationship. My engagement, a casualty of the truth, was over. The pain of losing him, of letting go of a future we had envisioned together, was real and raw. But beneath the grief, a sense of relief flickered. Kendra and I, our bond strengthened in the crucible of revelation, navigated this uncharted territory together. We were sisters, confidants, each other's anchors in a world turned upside down. And our adoptive parents, they were no longer the infallible figures of our childhood, but flawed, complex individuals who had made mistakes, who had loved us the only way they knew how. The truth had set us free to forge our own paths, to define our own identities, to love and be loved without the burden of secrets. The future, once a carefully orchestrated symphony, was now ours to write. The truth, a double-edged sword, had carved its path through my life, leaving its mark on my soul. Scars, reminders of the deception and pain, would forever be etched upon my heart. The life I had known, the love I had embraced, all revealed as an elaborate illusion. But even in the darkness, stars emerged. The love of a sister, a bond forged in shared history, and the raw vulnerability of exposed truths. Kendra, my reflection, my confidant, the missing piece of my soul I never knew existed. Forgiveness, a slow and arduous journey, began to bloom in the fertile ground of understanding. My adoptive parents, their flaws laid bare, became human. Their love, once a source of confusion and pain, now a comforting constant. The world, once a tapestry woven with threads of deceit, began to unravel, revealing the raw beauty of authenticity beneath. I began to pick up the pieces of my shattered reality, each shard a reflection of a life lived in half-truths. The pain of lost innocence, of a love built on a foundation of lies, was a constant companion. But with each passing day, the sharp edges of grief dulled, replaced by a quiet determination to rebuild, to create a new narrative, one rooted in honesty, acceptance, and the unwavering strength of familial bonds. The truth, once a destructive force, became a catalyst for growth, a crucible from which I emerged stronger, more resilient. The life I had once taken for granted, the privileges I had never questioned, now paled in comparison to the richness of genuine connection. I had found my truth, and in doing so, I had found myself. The weight of the secret, a heavy cloak I had carried for so long, finally slipped from my shoulders. The world, once constricted by the walls of deception, now stretched out before me, limitless and full of possibility. The love I had shared with my fiancé, though built on a foundation of lies, had been real. The pain of our separation was a testament to the depth of our connection, a connection that would forever hold a bittersweet place in my heart. But I was no longer defined by the past, by the choices made for me, by the secrets that had shaped my life. I was free to love, to forgive, to embrace the complexities of my own story. And in the freedom of an unburdened heart, I found a peace I had never known before. The future, once a carefully orchestrated symphony conducted by others, now lay before me, a blank canvas awaiting my own unique composition. The possibilities, once limited by the confines of my former life, now seemed endless. I embraced the unknown with open arms, ready to write my own story, to define my own destiny. The past, with all its complexities and heartaches, had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. I was a woman reborn, forged in the fires of adversity, tempered by truth and forgiveness. The journey had been long, the scars permanent, but the stars, oh, how brightly they shone. And as I walked towards the horizon, I knew with unwavering certainty that the best was yet to come.